Good morning and welcome again to another edition of our journey toward debt freedom. So we're moving forward. Hopefully, we're all moving forward in a positive direction. And if you're not, remember it's okay. It's okay if you have some valleys in addition to your peaks. But one of the things that we want to start working on are our systems to keep us moving in a positive direction. One of the things that I've learned over time is that it's very important to have a plan, and what's more important is to have systems in place to ensure that your plans come to fruition. So for your budgeting purposes, part of the plan is planning out how you're going to succeed with that plan. Now, many of you have heard of the 10-10-80 approach, which you probably have heard from experts or from your accountant or from your financial planner. However, many years ago, I started using a different approach called the 10-10-50-30 approach. And I originally got this idea from someone who's very wise that I have worked with for years. And I consider her one of my mentors, and that's Lynn Richardson. And I began teaching this approach to my clients based on that. And with the 10-10-50-30, the first 10% goes to God. Now, for me, it's an automatic thing. My church has what they call electronic giving. And so that 10% every Monday morning, because banks are closed on Sunday, but first thing every Monday morning, 10% comes out of my account automatically. System, right? So you don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything. It automatically happens. For you, you may not believe in giving back, but I want to tell you that I have learned over time, and part of why I do what I do is because God has been so faithful to me. And I have found that giving that 10%, I get it back tenfold. And so I'm certainly not going to talk about religion here, but I want to tell you that wealthy people give back because they understand the importance of helping others. So I want to encourage you to consider tithing as it states in the Bible. The next 10% goes to savings. I always say to people, why do you work if you're not working for yourself? Why do you work if you're giving all of that money to someone else? You need to give that money to yourself, and you need to do it first. So systematic. Have it happen automatically. Your employer, in addition to giving you a paycheck or depositing into your checking account, will have an option for you to put a certain portion aside somewhere else, into a credit union. Remember, I said put it somewhere where you're not tempted. So put it into an account in South Dakota where there's no ATM account. When I first started off, I had it put into a mutual fund that was located in Kansas City, Missouri. And it was very difficult to get the money out. You had to call them on the phone or write them a letter, and then they cut a check, and it took 2 weeks for the check to come. So, it was very systematic. You had to plan out whenever you had to get the money out. But my money started to grow because I never touched that money. Another method that I always tell people to start to grow your money, you have to plan for the future. This is all about planning ahead of time. And so you need to start, if you haven't already, start planning for your retirement. And one of the easiest ways to do that is through a 401k, where you have it before you are taxed. And we're going to talk about taxation in the future. But what's really smart about a 401k is that many employers will match those funds. And so if you work for an employer that does the maximum match, which by government requirements is 6%, I want you to think about this. And let's use an easy number so that you can work it out really quickly in your head. So let's say that you make $100,000 a year. And if you put 6% aside, that's $6,000, right? Well, if your employer matches dollar for dollar, then instead of having $6,000 in the bank at the end of the year, you have $12,000 in the bank at the end of the year. So that's 100% profit on your money, and you haven't invested or done anything but put the money aside. Is that not smart? That's brilliant. So I want you to think about this. You want to always have at least 10% in liquid funds. So the first year, your goal should be 10%. So if you make that $100,000, 10%, $6,000 in liquid funds. If you make $50,000, 10%, that's $5,000. I'm sorry, 10% of $100,000 is $10,000. If you make $50,000 a year, 10% is $5,000. That should be somewhere where you can access it in case of a rainy day. Roof starts to leak. Car breaks down. Child has an accident. Whatever the case may be. 10% should always be in liquid funds. Then, as you start to save the 10%, that goes to your long-term investments when you start investing in stocks and other things, or into your retirement account. But 10% of every paycheck should go into savings. All right, so that's 20% of your pay. So now the next 50% should go to your bills. So now it's important to go back to your budget and look at everything that's a bill. Rent, mortgage, insurance, utilities, gas and electric, credit cards where you have a payment every month. Add up those amounts, and if it comes to more than 50% of your pay, then it's really time to talk to a financial planner, talk to an accountant about how you need to tweak your money, because this is why you're in stress, because you can't afford to live. That last 30% is spending money for you to live off of. And if you're spending more than 50% of your pay on bills, then you're probably living paycheck to paycheck, and you're probably living in stress. I have people tell me all the time when I tell them about the 10% for tithing and the 10% for savings, they say, I can't do it. I can't afford to do it. And I always say to them, what if your employer tells you today that you have to live on 20% less money than what you were living before? Will you be able to do it? And every single time the person says yes. So you can do it. It's a matter of determining the system that allows you to do that. But the goal is to be able to live comfortably by paying off your debt, by putting money in savings, and in many cases just spending less money. Because remember, your spending money for the most part is on stuff. Now, it may be essential things like groceries or gas for your car, and some of those may fall under your bills if you charge them all the time. But a lot of times the spending money is for entertainment, clothing, junk food, stuff, things that I call stuff, not things that are going to be an asset for you. They're not even a liability, they're just an expense. But that's what that last 30% is. And so if you can't pay your bills in that 50%, then what has to happen is you have to lower your spending for that pay period so that you can pay those bills. Remember, our goal is to pay those bills off. So as those bills get paid off, then you have more money for savings and more money for spending. But the goal is, if you want to build wealth, you want to put that money into investments that are going to make you money. So that's our system for this week. I know, as always, it's going to be a big adjustment for you to do that, but I want you to start planning for what you need to do to start reducing your debt and start building your wealth. I hope this information was beneficial for you. I hope you have a fabulous week, and I look forward to hearing some positive results from you all.